All right, let's move on to the other ESPN game from last night, the Minnesota Timberwolves and the New York Knicks. A back and forth game in the first half. Minnesota had some success against the Knicks with their ball pressure, kind of kept them out of their transition game. Josh Hart talked a lot about this in his end of the third quarter interview on the broadcast, and he was right. After having just 8 transition points in the first half, they played much faster in the second half. They got 10 transition points just in the third quarter alone and 17 total in the second half. And again, like sometimes transition can be a rhythm thing, just like half court offense can be a rhythm thing. It's like starting an engine. Any basketball player who's played at a serious level will be able to tell you, like there's like an internal motor, right? And you get into a game and you're kind of feeling it out, but you get to a point where the engine's revving and all the sprinting and the running and playing hard becomes almost natural and almost second nature. It's like starting an engine. And the same thing happens in transition. Like once you get in a groove where all the guys are running every possession and it can get momentum to it's like an engine that's operating like hot, and you can start cutting teams to pieces running the floor. And we're seeing a lot more of these like Indiana Pacer style speed attacks from the Knicks. There was a play in the early fourth quarter that I thought was a perfect example of this. Minnesota's at the foul line. Off of a make, Deuce McBride gets the ball in the inbounds and kind of a swoop through. So he starts on the right side and he kind of swoops by the foul line and grabs the ball on the run and essentially just attacks at full speed off of the made free throw. Jalen Clark was there guarding Deuce. Like he was there in the backcourt, ready to guard Deuce. But Deuce had such a head of steam that Jalen Clark had to backpedal right away. And like Jalen Clark's a good athlete, a really good perimeter defender. And Deuce attacked with so much force and speed off of a made basket that by the time Clark finally cut off the drive, he was all the way at the left block on the other end of the floor. And that drive was so significant that Naz Reid and Julius Randle reacted so aggressively that they were both by the charge circle by the time Jalen Clark cut him off. So then Deuce just pitches it back to the top of the key to a wide open OG Anunoby. Naz Reid throws like a crazy closeout with no chance. OG just rips through, gets grabbed, just powers through the grab and gets a wide open layup for an and one, like the easiest and one OG's ever had in his career. And it's like, there's no reason to run half court offense or to get into all these sophisticated actions if you don't need to. And this is what we saw from Indiana last year. This is what we've seen copycat teams like Miami, like Portland to start this season, like Chicago to start the season. You just push the ball at the floor and you hit a gap. And when you hit a gap, someone's going to react, and then you can just play basketball off of that. And it's like you would be lucky if you ran a horn set with Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns to get OG Anunoby a wide open catch on the perimeter. And it's like just having Deuce attack with speed off of a make ends up generating that type of advantage. And it just, to me, that's the story of the potential for the Knicks offense, right? We all know what Jalen Brunson can do when things get slow in the half court. And Jalen was brilliant in the second half, scoring on Jalen Clark one-on-one, beating Gobert and switches with jumpers. I thought he passed the ball super well in the second half. But how can you generate as many easy opportunities as possible around those sequences to keep Jalen's usage lower so that his efficiency is higher? During the 3-game losing streak, they weren't as successful in transition. We're going to talk about it in a minute. A lot more Jalen pick and roll, a lot less efficient. In these 3 games that they won, a lot more success in transition, fewer possessions of Jalen Brunson in pick and roll, but more efficient in those possessions because he's getting to pick his spots and he doesn't have to do it as often. And like, you just saw a ton of those easy opportunities that lighten the load on Jalen in that second half in transition. Like OG Anunoby, quick transition post up. Jalen feeds him, gets an easy layup. Like a rim pressure off of a drive that leads to Karl Anthony Towns for a trailing 3 at the top of the key. OG Anunoby in transition, trailing the middle, smokes a layup, but he occupies the rim protector. Mitchell Robinson gets an easy putback dunk. Mikal Bridges started the second half run with a big, easy, wide open 3 on the right wing on a transition kick ahead. Josh Hart driving the left wing in transition, gets into Julius Randle's body and gets a layup. These are all easy baskets that supplement the tougher offense that we know that Jalen Brunson can bring to the table. And here's the thing, like For all the talk about transition play and speed from the Knicks in training camp, they weren't playing very fast to start the regular season. As a matter of fact, in their 3-game losing streak, they averaged just 16 points in transition per game. That's not emphasizing transition. But outside of the first half against Minnesota, in this 3-game winning streak, they've been playing in transition a ton. As a matter of fact, in this 3-game winning streak, they are averaging 32 points per game in transition. That's double what it was in the losing streak. And again, it's a rhythm thing. And I'd extend this beyond the context even of the single game because they get their transition rhythm in the second half. I would extend this out to a season-long thing. As a team, the Knicks need to turn these things into a habit. The running, the kick-aheads, the attacking gaps early in semi-transition. All of that needs to become habit. Like, it needs to become part of their like natural way that they play basketball. That is what will lead to them having sustained success in that department. Lots of other Knicks contributed in the second half run. Josh Hart was a wrecking ball with his dribble penetration. Minnesota tried putting Gobert on him during that run, and he burned that pretty bad. He had a pull-up 3 at the top of the key. He burned him on a closeout off the left wing. His drives were just breaking Minnesota's defense. And he was, again, like a part of Minnesota was doing some chasing him off the 3-point line, which they probably shouldn't do. But again, like Josh Hart just slashing into the paint, doing a lot of damage. Deuce McBride was excellent in the fourth quarter run with his dribble penetration, like we talked about earlier in transition, but also knocking down threes. OG Anunoby, 25 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 stocks. I thought he was great in the third quarter run, especially with his defense. He had a direct hand in 3 of their transition buckets, including a pick-6 steal out at half court during that run. And OG's just off to a great start this year. As a matter of fact, he's averaging basically career highs across the board in a Knicks jersey. Career high in points, career high 61% true shooting, career high in rebounds, Knicks high in assists, the highest total he's had in a Knicks jersey, a career high 2.4 steals per game, just hooping his ass off as he's getting empowered a little bit more in this offense. Jordan Clarkson sparked that fourth quarter run right when he came in by hitting a 3 out of the corner and hitting a little bank shot. And then Mitchell Robinson, just downright destructive with his effort. Just in the second half, Mitchell Robinson had 3 blocks and 5 offensive rebounds. It was just everywhere. He had a block on an Anthony Edwards pull-up 3 as a help defender. And you could tell Ant was shocked. Like, he just kind of steps back and rises up, and Mitch comes flying in and blocks his pull-up 3. And it's just like kind of a bizarre play. You don't see help defenders that are off ball block a pull-up off the dribble 3 very often. Very unusual type of range that Mitch has on the defensive end of the floor. Mitch has always been sneaky good at blocking 3-point shooters, but it's usually in like a pick and roll. It's usually like a guy comes off in a drop look and he thinks he's got a look, but Mitch is just closer to the level than he makes you think with how far that he can sit back sometimes. Really strong metrics from the Knicks in their 3-game winning streak. 128 offensive rating as they start to gain some momentum on that end of the floor. 111 defensive rating, which is solid. They're grabbing 77% of opponents' misses. That's excellent. And 36% of their own misses, which is really, really, really good. 55.3 overall rebound percentage in the 3-game streak. They're barely turning the ball over at all in this stretch. Just playing really good basketball and starting to build some momentum, the Knicks. On the Wolves front, I'm not too worried about the offense. You're bringing Ant back. He looked pretty out of rhythm from being away from the game a little bit. That's going to change the way you play too, which will disrupt the rhythm of the way you guys have been playing. I'm actually a bit higher on the Wolves than I was to start the season on offense just because of how good Jaden McDaniels has looked. He's averaging 18 points per game to start the season. He's shooting the shit out of the ball from 3, continuing a trend from last year down the stretch. 63% true shooting, which is excellent. He's had 3 explosive scoring games already. He's hitting multiple threes almost every night, it seems. That to me, like I have my big picture concerns about the Wolves as like a processing team against the best defenses in the league, you know, fast teams that have high IQ backline guys or rim protection. Like those are the things that worry me a bit, but that's always been the case. To me, they just look like they're going to be more explosive when they're healthy and in rhythm because Ant and Julius and Jaden, it's just a really dynamic set of scoring talent. The defense doesn't look good at all, though. 27th in defensive rating. Rudy Gobert has looked bad to start the year. Jaden McDaniels hasn't been very good on the ball. And I think when your 2 foundational defenders get off to rough starts, it's just really hard to overcome. But I'm never falling for it again. last year, the Wolves had several stretches where they looked pretty bad on defense, especially to start the year. And then last year in the postseason, they just tightened the screws on the Lakers and Warriors and looked physical and athletic and just great on defense. And they were in the Western Conference Finals again. So, like, to me, they kind of feel like a switch flipping kind of defense that kind of coasts in the regular season. So I'm not going to allow myself to think that they're bad on that end. And look, here's the thing. Maybe we get to April and it turns out Rudy's washed and the Wolves have a problem. I'm just not falling for it in the regular season.